In the spring of 1893, a laborer climbed from an excavation trench in the ruins of Nippur carrying a broken piece of clay. At the time, no one believed this damaged fragment would be different from the thousands of other tax records found at the site. Early translators cataloged the artifact as CBS 10673. Because they could identify references to destruction and earlier ages, they placed it among other Mesopotamian flood traditions, another version of a story humanity had already heard many times. For decades, the tablet was studied and then largely forgotten. This changed only when digital archives allowed researchers to compare damaged passages line by line across thousands of separate Sumerian texts. Scholars noticed a recurring pattern in the opening section. The structure, wording, and sequence repeated in a way that defied standard literary emphasis, appearing instead like a rigid framework. Closer examination showed these repetitions were describing 7 distinct civilizations. One world appears, flourishes, and vanishes, followed by another. The tablet is a chronological ledger of collapse. We are about to walk through each of these entries, but first, subscribe to join us for our next investigation into hidden corners of history. Nippur stood as the spiritual heart of Mesopotamia, where scribes filled archives with records intended to outlive their own generations. This specific tablet represents a massive effort to preserve the memory of 7 cycles of history that ended before the Sumerian age even began. The first civilization in the sequence, Eridu, is said to have been consumed by the breath of Anu. The text describes a force descending from the sky that burns the landscape and permanently alters the ground. While historians often treat this as symbolic language, the description resembles a cosmic airburst. When a large object detonates in the atmosphere, it releases immense heat and pressure, capable of transforming a landscape in moments. The second civilization, Bad Tibira, met a different end. Rather than sudden fire, the danger came from the ground. Water turned foul and fields stopped producing, leading to a slow decline where the population watched their world weaken year after year. The third civilization's collapse followed a shift in the heavens. The sky no longer behaved as expected, light disappeared, and seasons became unreliable, leading to a total failure of food production. The fourth and fifth entries record civilizations born into ongoing crises. One spent generations adapting as advancing waters swallowed the coastlines. The next was pushed from its territory by an advancing cold that made entire regions uninhabitable. This sequence acts as an audit of physical vulnerabilities. By recording different causes, fire, poison, darkness, rising seas, and ice, the text catalogs the various ways the natural environment can unmake a society. With the sixth civilization, the threat shifts from external natural forces to a sickness that cannot be seen. While cities and fields remained intact, the communities themselves began to disappear. This illness followed the civilization's own trade routes, moving with merchants and travelers. The very connections that made the society strong became the pathways for its collapse. The seventh civilization witnessed the world itself becoming unstable. The surviving lines describe a state of total confusion, where natural boundaries and the behavior of water became unpredictable. This entry highlights the moment when a society can no longer survive because reality itself stops behaving according to the rules its people built their lives around. These entries suggest that as civilizations become more complex, they develop new internal weaknesses. Success and connectivity create the very vulnerabilities that eventually outpace a society's ability to adapt. This concept of cyclical history appears far beyond Mesopotamia. The Aztecs described successive suns, representing separate ages of existence that each ended through different catastrophic forces. In ancient India, sacred traditions described the yugas, vast cycles where the world emerges, flourishes, and sequentially declines before giving way to the next age. Similarly, the Hopi people of North America preserve traditions of earlier worlds existing before this one, each ending in a collapse that forced humanity into a new beginning. These distinct global traditions share a common structure. They reflect a shared memory of history not as a straight line of progress, but as a sequence of rising and falling worlds. The eighth and final entry on the Sumerian tablet describes a civilization that masters the forces within nature itself. Its people become powerful in ways earlier generations could scarcely imagine. According to the surviving lines, that very achievement becomes the source of a new danger. For the first time in the sequence, the lethal threat is not a force of nature, but the civilization's own power. The text of CBS 10673 breaks off at this point. The ultimate fate of the eighth civilization remains unrecorded, leaving the sequence unfinished. This broken tablet survives as a reminder of the worlds that came before. The scribes recorded 7 collapses they believed were history. The outcome of the 8th belongs to the people living it.